Gamshi Lakwan. My name is Mark Harris. That was a Kalapuya greeting in Yankala, Kalapuya. Welcome to DiversiTV, Season 9, our last episode for this season, as it's spring break here at Lane Community College. We'll be introducing our guests shortly. If you are new to DiversiTV, welcome. DiversiTV is a weekly interview show broadcast live from Lane Community College main campus. If you are part of our growing legion of fans out there, soon to be also in cyberspace in the next year or so, welcome back. DiversiTV got started a few years ago, and our mission, and we do decide to accept it, it's not an impossible one, is to illuminate everyday diversity issues and give the mic and the camera to those who don't always get it. To that end, we have a variety of guests each season, and each season roughly corresponds to an LCC term. So this year we've looked at a Latino perspective with schools, Springfield Schools, a Latino youth perspective out in the community with Patricia Cortez, a class perspective from William Wise, who runs First Place, a St. Vincent de Paul program for homeless, The Art of Recovery with African-American artist Craig Lasha, Hunger in Lane County with Caitlin Hendrickson. Last week we had a Chinese-American perspective with David Tam, and tonight we have James Anderson, who is the editor-in-chief of the Lane Community College student newspaper, The Torch. Now, The Torch is the official student-managed newspaper of Lane Community College, published every Thursday during fall, winter, and spring terms. It's an award-winning, student-produced weekly campus newspaper with an average circulation of 4,000. Published by authority of Lane Community College Board of Education through the Media Commission, it's an autonomous newspaper free from censorship by the college administration, faculty, and student government. The Torch serves three purposes: to provide news and information of importance and interest to Lane students and staff. It serves as a learning laboratory for students of journalism, graphic arts, photography, publishing, and advertising, and also provides a communication channel for student commentary and debate. All Lane students may submit essays and letters for publication in the Torch. And so tonight our guest is James Anderson, editor-in-chief of the Torch. Welcome.
Thank you.
Where are you from? I ask that question as a standard thing because many times one can't assume that people are from here because lots of people are not. Where are you from?
Well, I was born in Kuri, Japan, and my father was in the military when he met my mother, and me and my first two brothers were born over there, or just over in the United States at Fort Lewis military base, and I was
Fort
raised
Lewis in Washington?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was primarily raised by my grandparents on my father's side, so I've been an Asian American in our country, but I was raised with a strong kind of Western influence. So.
Okay. So how'd you come to Eugene to do the work that you do?
I was actually, my grandparents lived in Springfield, Oregon, and for the most part, my two younger brothers that were older, and I have two that are younger, they were raised by my grandparents, and that's where they lived, was Pleasant Hill and then Springfield, Oregon. So I went to elementary school and middle school and high school in Springfield.
Okay. All right. So what brings you to Lane? And what's your major and your academic goals?
Well, I was raised in a really blue-collar family. I went to work in the mill shortly after high school. In fact,
Weyerhaeuser?
Yeah, Weyerhaeuser ended up buying the mill that I worked at.
Okay.
But it was kind of a family-owned and operated Trust Royce McMillan when I first started there about 15 years ago. I was 19, and my grandfather worked in the mills during an era where a single breadwinner in the household could bring in enough money to support a family based on that. and he worked for 18 years, I think, at Roseboro, and then another 22 years as a pipe fitter at Weyerhaeuser. And growing up, I just internalized those norms, and that was what I aspired to do, was, you know, bring home the bacon. And so I went, and as soon as I was done with high school, instead of considering, you know, pursuing an education, I did, you know, what I thought I should, and I went into work at a mill. So I was there for a good 15 years before I started meeting friends and socializing with a group of PhD students over at U of O, and they kind of instilled in me the value of an education beyond just getting a job.
PhDs in what department?
English literature.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
okay, working class background
Yeah.
here in Eugene, you know, in the timber industry, etc. And so going to school, then, you know, you kind of pick that up by osmosis. So where do you want to go with that?
Well, first I had to figure out. Well, first of all, working for so long in a mill, I kind of internalized, you know, that sense of security. You know, you get a biweekly paycheck. You get, you know, all the benefits: medical, dental, optical. Those things. It's really easy to become dependent on those things. And I really didn't have the motivation to leave what I knew I could rely on,
Right.
and venture into the unknown.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah. So I really had to develop a sense of purpose. I really had to figure out, you know, something that would cause me to experience enough passion to risk what was comfortable and predictable for me. So just from reading, you know, I've read a lot of kind of philosophical and spiritual books, and you know, self-improvement books, stuff like that, and I decided that I had more to offer than just spending 9 to 5 in a production mill. I wanted to do something that I could reach out and benefit the community or people in my lives. You know, even if it was just a handful of people, if I could make a difference. You know, I figured that was going to be more important to me than staying with something that was predictable.
So the media, how does that figure into your plans? How did you decide to work for the Torch?
I didn't. I picked up a copy of the Torch when I was out here. I just decided I was going to come back and figure out what my purpose was going to be in this world. And a lot of what I really got into from my experience on the receiving end was into like psychology-based experiences, and I wanted to affect other people's lives. A very influential mentor for me was it was just a professional relationship. My counselor, you know, made a profound difference in how I perceive things, and I wanted to somehow be able to give that back, maybe influence somebody else and play that role. So, and that's the only thing that really came to mind. So I came to LCC and with my major being psychology, and I still have goals along those lines, but for the most part, it takes a master's or it takes some kind of graduate degree in psychology really to get plugged into doing something that I would find really rewarding. So in the meantime, I had heard that you should have really good communication and writing skills to be able to, to perform this role.
Definitely true.
Picked up a copy of the Torch, and they said they were hiring new writers. And I consider myself pretty adventurous with trying new things, and I wanted to, and I was in this mode anyway to where I felt a little bit jaded because I'd stuck so long with something just because it was predictable that may or may not have been my calling. And so I was in this mode where I just wanted to try new experiences and try them on for size. And so I picked it up, and they said they were hiring new writers, so I thought, what the heck, I'll go in and work on my writing skills and give it a try. If it wasn't something that I was interested in, then I could always, set it aside and go to another direction and pursue something else. So I came in and filled out an application to be a reporter, and they called me back. And last year's editor, Lana Bowles, she called me and said that I could come in and give it a try. So I went in and I started reporting.
As a writer?
As a writer, yeah.
Right.
So I went in and I just started doing some features writing, and I submitted it, and I didn't have any formal training in writing. I just kind of, I like to express myself, so I did that, and I started learning more about what it was to be a writer and how you were to convey your thoughts and feelings on paper, and it was actually really rewarding for me, and I could see to where an increased vocabulary and having those writing skills, those communication skills, can benefit anybody regardless of what direction they went into. So I just kept investing more time and effort into this this new study, new for me, and I started finding it really rewarding. And I could also see that the things I was reporting on, some of them, my preference was feature style, which is more kind of like human interest, a little more in depth. It's not as much, like hard-hitting, time-sensitive like news, and exposés and stuff like that. My style.
We're just coming into it. You have the lingo down pretty good.
Well, I've got some great mentors where I'm at, and that's all I can take.
Hard news, features, and
yeah.
Okay,
So my preference was writing these, kind of feel-good human interest stories. They weren't always, happy endings, but there were really important issues, about how certain events and philosophies have helped shape people's lives. To me, they were really important, and they made a difference in the community. And I started seeing, I started to see from my experiences, I started to get feedback on how this writing could affect people's lives. It's a bit of information per article, but it's the accumulation of all that information that people use to make decisions that really affect the outcome of their lives. And if you can contribute even just a little bit to that, you can have a profound influence in the direction a person ends up going.
Yeah.
And then they had an opening for editor-in-chief, and I applied for it, not really expecting anything, and I got the job. So
kind of the way the cat learned to swim?
Yeah, I guess.
Well, how do you bring your particular stamp or brand, if you even have a brand, or what is the term in writing, your oeuvre? Because you're just. You're beyond just finding your voice, but you could be, finding your voice. What do you think editor-in-chief means to you in terms of your particular direction, your particular influence on the paper?
Well, there's the way I perceive it is there's several levels to my role there. At one level, I'm a journalist. I'm bringing information to our readers. It's a service that we provide for the community, and we abide by a strict code of ethics. We have our the bounds of our code. What we deem appropriate or inappropriate, and I try to adhere to that as much as possible. On a deeper level, the service we provide, like I said earlier, the information we're giving people is collectively is the information that people will use to make decisions in their lives. The staff members at the Torch, as hardworking as they are and as underpaid as they are, they're really idealistic, and we have an age range from just fresh out of high school. Some of them haven't completed high school, and some of them are professional writers out there. Steve Rowland was out there writing for a community newspaper and has been doing it professionally, and came back to sharpen his saw and to make himself more effective as a writer.
Okay.
And I assign a pretty high level of priority to meeting their needs and making sure that they have what they need to learn and progress and finish their school academic endeavors.
Steve Rowland. Didn't I see his byline? Oh, there he is.
Yeah.
It's all about me. Okay.
That was an editorial that he wrote that was actually kind of about the ego. And the different levels of self-awareness that a person goes through when they progress through life. And I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah. Okay. What about, so what do you find stimulating about running the paper, the many levels that you have?
Well, I just had a conversation with one of my advisors, Frank Rogalski. He likened it to putting cooked spaghetti back into the package, because we actually have a lot of people that we end up trying to form and develop and contribute to people that have already had their own experiences. They've come to a lot of conclusions about their experiences in life. They have their own philosophies. They have their own style of doing things. And in a way, we're trying to help them get develop into who they're there to develop.
Yeah.
But they already have all these habits that they developed
Right.
before they came
They
in
do.
and tendencies.
Right.
So it can be kind of a circus sometimes.
Well, I mean, it could be interesting. I mean, because
It
the
is.
conversations that we've had, in my role, my other role, because when you've asked me, and I will get to it now that I don't have the distraction of a class and simply,
Okay.
the caseload, doing a regular column on recovery issues.
Yeah.
Because one of the things I'm finding, of course, is that college age, the traditional college age, that is tradition being 4-year school, fresh out of high school, it's their first time coming to an environment that they perceive as being freer, and so whatever substance use habits they had in high school get amplified, that is, they get worse in college, and there is that same perception here, even though we have an older average student age here. I mean, I think our average age is late 20s, early 30s or something like that. So, I mean, you're right in there with it, the typical Lane student, older, mature, been in the world, been out of mommy and daddy's nest, et cetera, et cetera. You may have had, a hard living lifestyle and, have dialed it back because, you have to be responsible, right? And so some of the issues that we've been dealing with this particular population, the newspaper can serve in terms of talking about the issues that they face. Because as you've pointed out, people come to us with set ideas, set agendas, but you have this mix of, people come to us in transition.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what community college is. So, they're often coming to us after a train wreck, or to try and find a direction, or so when you were talking about the newspaper, giving people information so that they can make decisions about their lives, like, wow, okay, that's different. So when we were talking earlier about modeling yourself after, for example, the Register Guard. Well, the traditional news organization really is about presenting the news and only offering opinions in the op-ed section or in the editorial, where if it's the voice of the community, then you can have opinions, and they're going to be varying opinions, right? Mm-hmm. But I would challenge you to say you could exceed the Register Guard standard then, because it's even more critical for us to be able to look at, okay, you can take this and become even more pro-social and be even more a contributor to your community in terms of being informed. What do you think your role is then, in giving that, in shaping that either opinion or positive decision making?
Well, and I'm still learning. I'm still learning from my advisors all the time, and the classes I've taken here on journalism. And I do know that there are certain restrictions in any publication. That I mean, as journalists, we're supposed to be objective and non-biased as much as possible. So that's why we do limit our personal beliefs, and there's definitely room to exercise that ability, to come to a conclusion based on perspective, But we it does have to be limited, because the whole credibility thing, we're the news and not like a fictional show. We have to adhere to certain guidelines, to maintain that credibility. But like you said, there's well, we do have some advantages the Register Guard and the U of O Emerald don't have, is that we're weekly. And while that's a limitation when it comes to like up-to-date news, we don't have the daily ability to inform people, but it's an advantage in that we can take that entire week and try to craft our stories and to put the right graphics and the right images on there, and give the entire package to our readers, that's really going to be interesting and visually pleasing to them. And as far as having the potential to fit more of that in there, we can do things. Like I remember the conversation we have. We're working on getting a question and answer session with Mark going on about students that may have issues, personal issues, addiction issues, ethnic-related issues, anything they want to ask about. And that's been something that I've been trying to promote, because I think that would not only be entertaining, but which is the medicine, the sugar that makes the medicine goes down. people want to read things that entertain them or are informative. But I think it's really, I think it's going to be, it has a lot of potential for being really valuable, life-altering information. And I think, well, you're a personality on campus that a lot of people know about. You're a prominent personality is what we call it. And, people, students out there have instructors that they follow, that they keep track of, that they want to know what a certain instructor's stance is on something. If they bump into this or that instructor, they're going to ask them questions. They want to know how this instructor thinks, or and they may not agree 100%, but there's an influence there.
Yeah.
So, if we can use these, credible and influential sources of information and use that to benefit the readers, I think that's a great idea. And it's not coming out of, this editor's opinion, although we do write opinions for the op-ed section, but we can we can put that in and format it into other parts of the paper, either news or features or something like that. And, it's not our opinion as editors, so it's legitimate. We can do that.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you're talking about being objective, and I was thinking, okay, well, what position is that exactly? Because, yeah, obviously, I had some notoriety before, doing the show, right? And you're that TV guy, right? Or you're the guy in the weekly, or you're this, that, and the other local celebrity, and so until I saw, both the picture on the online version, which we'll talk about in a second, and this current one, now on newsstands today, right? I forgot, when we were at the Peace Conference, when you asked me, I think I forgot even the question that you asked. So just seeing that particular answer, I think because the entire context, what did I think of Tom Hayden? And, I was thinking, well, okay, I haven't seen him since I was in high school. Yeah. Right? And, I was pretty lefty in high school. Surprise, surprise.
You said you worked for a newspaper, too, in high school.
Well,
an underground newspaper.
I didn't work for the newspaper. I got suspended for possession of the newspaper that my friends had. I never actually wrote any stories. I just got caught with 10 of them and got suspended. And so, and I smarted off with, the principal and said, wait a minute, I thought, are you telling me that an American high school, wait, what about, the First Amendment? See me in my office, Mark. Confiscated my newspapers and, okay. So, at the time, this is 71, the Cambodia strike, the Vietnam War is in full swing. There's an illegal war starting in Cambodia. So, our teachers were striking in LA Unified. And so, we had a sit-down strike in solidarity with them. And then we go over to UCLA for the Cambodia strike. And so, for me, Tom Hayden, Jane Fonda, Angela Davis, these are the big kids in college, right? I mean, we're in high school. And so, Tom's 15 years, he's 70, so he's 15 years older than I am. Okay. So really, that's the big kids. I mean, it's within the same generation, within the same 20 years. So, I mean, he's older. Yeah. So we looked up to them and, the Panthers and, all the other folks that were, part of the scene in Los Angeles in, the late 60s, early 70s. And so things were polarized. So, the underground newspaper, which is a question I'll be getting, I don't know that we'd ever get to that level here at LCC, but, the standard of reference was we're in the middle of a war. And the regular newspaper, The Warrior, right, is not talking about the issues that are, really germane to students. So, I mean, to talk about what's going on in the times, and I mean, that's what, Tom's book is talking about, the long 60s, from the 60s to Barack Obama. He's saying, here we are, we're in a war. We're in, we have a volunteer army, but we have the same social agenda that Martin Luther King talked about, of the war basically sucking away the resources from the domestic agenda in terms of, social health and veterans, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, our underground newspaper in the 70s was basically talking about, okay, girls are getting pregnant, so obviously sex education isn't working, so what we need is free contraceptive passed out through the health office, right?
Yeah.
There's a draft, my number was 35, I had to register, and they were taking 50, so, draft counseling, not just ROTC,
Yeah.
issues like that. So I ran for as student body president with a 10-point platform modeled after the Black Panthers, but except tailored to high school, and those were the issues.
Yeah.
Right? And so the regular student newspaper wouldn't talk about those things.
It's a hot potato.
Well, whatever. I mean, okay, we didn't think it was hot, but this is what we're looking at.
Yeah.
So why can't we talk about racism? Why can't we talk about the Vietnam War? Why can't we talk about the fact that if girls are getting pregnant, they get kicked out of school? Et cetera, et cetera,
It needs
et cetera.
to be addressed.
It needed, these are the issues that were germane. And so, one of the things that we found out, as student body president and, also running a newspaper is, right, get your facts straight. Maybe you don't need to drop the F-bomb. Maybe you don't need to use 4-letter words, but you can still play the story straight and cover what you covered. So the issues that we were dealing with either involved the principal's permission, Board of Education policy, or going up against state law when Ronald Reagan was the governor. And so, what happened with, the newspaper, the third underground newspaper, which is called the Red Tide, and it's like, okay, we were being called communists because of our anti-war stance, and yet, none of us were actually, I wasn't a member of the party, but whatever, didn't necessarily believe in them. They're friends of mine, my friend, the people running the newspaper, et cetera. But the part of the deal was with dealing with relevant issues that are affecting people's lives. And so here, in this context, where when I made that quote about Afghanistan, one of the things is looking at, okay, I believe that, while I wasn't going to go to Vietnam because my father, a veteran, said, no, this is not your war. Viet Cong never called you nigger. It's the Muhammad Ali line, right?
Yeah.
So, but I understand if people feel the need to serve their country in that way,
Yeah.
But I'm a drug counselor.
Yeah.
So killing people, that's what the military is for.
Yes.
That's a choice. It is harder to teach people to live than to kill people.
Yes.
Way harder.
Yep.
So, and dealing with, men and women who are coming back with PTSD, having seen horrific things, and then putting their lives together here.
Or trying to.
It's like, okay, it's like, hey, I have some compassion for you. I'm not thinking of you as a baby killer like we thought of, it's like, look, you're a human being, you were in a particular circumstance, you made this economic choice just like you made an economic choice to go into the mill.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a very
I'll
fair
get money for
parallel.
college, et cetera, and then, wow. And so we're dealing with folks like that. And so if the torch were to take up those kind of issues and talk about, the VETS program, when I was talking about media advocacy with you, and we'll talk about that in a second. But what are some of the other challenges you think are your greatest challenges with the newspaper?
Well, to just take one step back and address what you were talking about. First, I really am trying to get people to submit letters to the editor. And I've been trying, people will get mad sometimes at our angle or our coverage of a certain event or something that happened, and they'll be mad at us. But their belief, their observation is a very valid one, whether or not it agrees with us. They have a right. That's the First Amendment doesn't just apply to journalists.
Yeah, right.
And I've been promoting, I've been encouraging, I've been offering to work with people on their grammar if they're self-conscious about it, if they don't consider themselves writers, But I want their perspectives. I want our readers' perspectives, even if they disagree with us. I want them to be submitted because that's what we do. We provide that service to the community. We get information to our readers. It may or may not be in line or in sync with what the individual editors believe or what I believe, but it's, it's a valid perspective.
Yeah.
And you don't know how many students have come to me and complained about, the fact that, we reported on something, we reported on a couple of LCC students of color that ended up on the front page, and we were accused of putting it on there because they were that, or maybe we weren't accused of doing that, but we were told that we should consider how that reflects on an ethnic group, that's represented like that. And I told a couple of people that they had a valid perspective, that I wanted them to send something in. And when they were venting on me, that was when they were really wanting to bring it up. But I've suggested, send us something so that we can get your perspective out there conveyed, even if it's in disagreement of us, even if it's insulting, of us.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Because it's information. It's important, pertinent information that people want to read about. And I haven't gotten any of those letters yet.
Yeah. And this is DiversiTV, so let's put that on Front Street. So
Okay.
A lot of our students basically, because this is one community, so our students basically get involved with University of Oregon students and for better or worse, adopt some of their behavior patterns for better or worse, right?
Okay.
And so the president of the BSU basically, objected to your putting the two athletes who are African American, and he said that just reflected badly on us. And this is, I don't know, remember if this was actually during, February. Why are we doing this and not Black History Month? Et cetera, et cetera. And so one of the things that I was saying, okay, before you go off, if you're going to write a letter, whatever, before you go off, tactically, make sure that, okay, if there has been an issue where they have put, because there have been white athletes that have broken the law and have made front page, in the Register Guard, and you're basically taking the Register Guard feed, which, again, is another issue there, right? Tiger Woods, Ernie Kent, football players, yada, yada, yada. I mean, that's one of the pegs. You're reporting the news. And so not necessarily, that's one of the points of view of the press. So I said, okay, get your facts straight. Make sure, if you want to do a critique, find that out. And then what is the policy that you want to advance? So think about it strategically, right? Rather than just simply complain, though complaining's okay. But I said, look, you're a leader.
Yes.
Okay? So if you're a leader, then you need to advance a policy. That's the level that you have to think strategically.
Yeah.
If you are just Joe Blow black student who are objecting to, portrayal or et cetera, if these were your friend, whatever, right? Then that's one position, but you're a leader of a student organization. Advocate for, the highest thing. Like, for example, let's do a story about, black athletes who are scholars. 'Cause there are some.
That would be fantastic. I would love to do a story like that.
Right.
Well, you reminded me earlier on tonight too that we do share some common beliefs and it's kind of a common agenda, in that we both advocate for cultural diversity and cultural awareness. I actually met you. You reminded me today that I met you at an ethnic event.
Disorient.
Disorient Film Festival.
In the interest of disclosure, we are the members of the press. So
So, and I actually did. I remembered you from there, and then shortly after that, I interviewed you for a story I was doing about the addiction clinic or
the recovery center.
Recovery center, yes. I was doing a story there, and these when people serve these roles in community, they are so interwoven and interconnected. Sometimes I have to stop and think about what context I've known this person in, because I may know them in from 3 or 4 different community relationships. I think ethnic awareness and cultural awareness is very important. And when we put that story out, we really didn't have the intention of portraying any ethnic group negatively or anything. And if I mean, journalism is, and I don't know how broadcast journalism is. You know, my experience is with the paper, but it's just such a fast pace that sometimes you have to get to the point to where you're reactively just taking information and conveying it to our readers, especially for daily.
Right.
But and we have so much talent working there. But just like some of the LCC leaders, the students that are in leadership positions. It's that you have this abundance of resource in the form of passion and ideals, okay, and you have all this raw, enthusiasm, this motivation, to push this agenda through, but they haven't developed the maturity and the experience yet to temper that, to give it structure.
Right, they don't.
So sometimes you have kind of these emotional, conflicts, that where people have a right to be upset, but they just, like you were saying, haven't analyzed the hows and whys and what the most strategic, way of resolving that would be. And that's kind of, in a lot of ways, I'm kind of a peacemaker. I want to make sure that I do, my community relationships are very important to me. But at the same time, I am the messenger that often gets killed. If the message isn't perceived positively, we still have that responsibility, whether it's good news or bad news, whether somebody thinks that they have something to gain, or if they lose status or street cred or whatever because of something that we printed. If it's true, we have an obligation to put that out there, even if some people don't like what people are reading.
But again, public information is public information.
Exactly.
Okay, so your arrest record is public information.
Yes.
So there's a piece in which, I was in the process. I am in the process of crafting an op-ed, talking about
great
what my standard of reference is
for the Weekly or the Torch.
Actually,
sorry, I had to get that out there. I've been after Mark for a long time to be a bigger part of our.
That's a fair question.
It's because I respect his input.
That's a fair question. It was actually for the Guard, and it's basically because it had to go community-wide, and it basically was dealing with the whole U of O athlete situation.
Okay.
Which our students were involved with that. I mean, that's like one little piece of it. And so, what was essentially advocating is, as a faculty member, as a counselor, all right, we are often dealing with what we call in academia in loco parentis. We're the local parents, except that we're dealing with students who are adults, okay, who might not have been parented at all, and are bringing their behaviors, what they consider normal behaviors. So, you drink and you come to school, and you're 33. How did you get raised? Why do you think that's normal behavior? To get drunk and come to school? No, we don't do that here. Okay, that's not adult behavior, right? And sometimes you have to teach people over and over, right? And so the piece that I'd be constructing is about, okay, our athletes are supposed to be scholars. They're students first. I mean, that's the official policy, not only just here in the U of O, but at the U of O. You're student athletes. Okay, so the construction of the phrase, student first, you're a scholar first, and then you're an athlete. So you're a student who's using your athletic talent to finance your way through school. But that means that you're going to be having a degree. Okay? We are not a farm team for professional sports. But a lot of people are using that and acting accordingly. So my standard of reference, just because that's my adult role models, is the Harris family and the Harris family, the extended family, they're college athletes who are scholars. They're doctors, they're lawyers, they're college professors, they're in the classroom, that's, athletics isn't the end-all be-all for them, right? And so I don't notice that is the same, that same value is being instilled, locally. And so that's what I'd call for, and I'd be advocating for that as a policy, that as an attitude. So what I find, the reason I asked, for example, if I haven't asked that already, is that the whole question about who reads a newspaper. in the 21st century. You know, I'm finding a lot of students are not necessarily reading,
Yeah.
let alone reading a newspaper. I mean, they'll Google something before they'll read the Register Guard, New York Times, or the Torch. So what do you think is the role of, you know, the student newspaper in the 21st century? I mean, you have an online edition.
Yes,
so.
we do have lcctorch.com. Well, first of all, and I just had a discussion with one of my advisors today about this, is he said that that journalism isn't going away, it's just changing. And everything's changing in society. At one time, you know, we got all of our information from the newspaper, and then for a long time people would you know, tune into the radio station to get their news through that format, and then for a while, you know, TVs were brand new, and you know, now it's internet. And you still have people that have their preference in what format that they get their news in. We have some people that, you know, love to watch CNN while they're on their treadmill in the morning, you know, getting ready for their day. You have people that, you know, go online for all of their news, and you have some people like me that still like to get their, you know, their news magazines
in their hand
and newspapers. They like to put it under their arm and while they're drinking their cup of coffee, going out the door for the day. You know, and there's still times where, you know, it's not practical to have a computer when you're at the beach, you know, or it's raining and you're at the bus stop. You know, it's good old-fashioned paper print. You know, is still, and I know a lot of people too are really advocating for the you know, the renewable resource aspect of that, and I do think it's important, but. Paper, if done responsibly, I think, is a renewable resource. We just haven't always practiced it responsibly because, you know, follow the money.
Right,
You know,
exactly. I mean, you did work for a paper mill.
Exactly.
So.
Having worked for Weyerhaeuser, I'm very familiar with, you know, despite the heavy PR, you know, they did. There was a lot of clear cutting in the history of that, and that's why you know, they faced you know, so much you know, so much criticism, and you know, it's starting to turn around. You start to become more responsible. They're adapting more, you know, environmentally friendly methods, but you know, that history is still there, and we do have to monitor, and that's something I'm aware of too. And that's one of the reasons why that's one of a few reasons that I'm pushing. I'm actually advocating for. I'm in the process of getting a ballot measure approved so that the students can vote on it, and that's going to be one of our objectives, is to put web editors, to hire them at the Torch, and to develop our website more so that the people can use you know, the online version of our paper if they don't want to, you know, take the literal paper and create waste. That's going to be another option of theirs, and it'll also help us to help the editors and the writers of the Torch, you know, pay for their schooling too.
Yeah.
So, and I'm a big advocate of that. You know, it's by serving the community, by providing them information is an important role for me. But especially, you know, I feel a sense of ownership for the students that come in and are coming into the Torch and trying to develop their vocabulary and their writing skills. You know, and I feel a sense of responsibility for helping them in their journey to achieve academic success. So,
and definitely upping the level of their game.
Yes.
So, I've been here, well, I've been at Lane for 18 years. So, I believe you're the first Asian editor-in-chief
really
of the Torch.
Okay.
Right? I may be wrong, and I'm willing to be proven wrong on that if they keep records of such things. I know there have been black people on the as part of the editorial staff or the staff before. What do you think the Torch's role is in advancing the diversity mission of the school?
That's a good question. First, I want to say that we actually have had both genders in editor-in-chiefs in all roles. We've had a variety of sexual orientations there representing it, and you know, ethnic backgrounds. We have the Torch team. This is just this year and last year that I have experience with it. It is so diverse and colorful and expressive. It's fantastic that way. For anybody that's got a profound appreciation of culture and ethnicity, you know, it's kind of a positive, you know, experience just being there and you know, partaking in all this decision making. But and this kind of goes back too to my particular brand, you know, that I bring there too. But the Torch, As far as I can tell, the Torch has always put, at least from what I can tell from the back issues, you know, and what I've heard about talking to my advisors, they put a really high level of importance on that diversity. And I think it's responsible to, because if you've got a readership that encompasses a wide variety as far as culture and diversity and backgrounds and religions and all of those different aspects, you've got a responsibility to make sure that they're all represented, that they're all served.
Yeah.
You know, because they all have needs.
Right.
And you can't just say, okay, you know, this publication is going to be for white folk, or this publication is going to be just for the gays. You know, I mean, there are publications that do that, and that's fine if that's who they're serving. But if if you're a journalism publication and you serve the community, you know, regardless of color or culture or perspective, you know, you've got to figure out, you know, how you're going to serve their needs. And I take that responsibility very seriously, whether it's my role at the Torch or whether I'm involved in the community with the Japanese American Association and I'm advocating for Asian Americans. If I'm going to any kind of cultural event, you know, and I'm there to represent an interest in supporting that event, you know, even if it's not something that I can completely share that experience with, you know, in my background, you know, it's something to be promoted and encouraged. So I'd say I'm for it, and as far as I know, everybody else on the team, on the Torch team, is for it too.
Okay. So let's up the ante for a second.
All right.
All right. So, you know, there was a comment about the, you know, read it in the Register Guard, et cetera, and you talked about kind of patterning yourself after the Register Guard, and I'd say you could actually up your game so you could be superior to them. You know, no disparaging on them, other than, I mean, I do write for them on occasion.
Yeah. And the Weekly.
And the Weekly.
And soon for the Torch, hopefully.
And soon for the Torch. Again. In addictions work, we talk about, when I was a co-chair of the Eugene Springfield Partnership, Substance Abuse Prevention Partnership, I took a training on media advocacy with Robert Wood Johnson, and what media advocacy is the strategic use of the media to achieve a public health policies change, usually fighting addiction. But it doesn't have to be. It's a health promotion, so it could be, you know, domestic violence, crime prevention, any number of things. So if you're going to basically say, you know, wearing my federal compliance hat, a more diverse and more diversity-friendly environment lowers the stress and therefore the substance use of people of color and by extension white people too.
Okay.
All right? So a diverse environment, in addition to being friendly and productive, also is recovery friendly too, because that's a level of diversity as well, right?
Well, like you were talking about, you know, a lot of people end up here, are in a position, or in a state of transition. And I know exactly what you're talking about. I think when I first interviewed you for the Recovery Center article, I think I disclosed to you that I'm a recovered alcoholic. And, you know, addiction is, you know, in various parts of my family, as, you know, it goes back generations. And that's usually the case with most people, from my understanding. And that's
certainly.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why now, you know, one of the mentors in my life that had the most profound influence was a counselor of mine that, you know, convinced me to give sobriety a try. And maybe that's why I get such a sense of purpose too, and such a drive, is because I felt like, you know, I had this dormant talent and this sense of purpose that just, you know, just stayed stagnant all those years while I was, you know, just drinking my problems away. And now I'm catching up. I'm trying to make use of my opportunity here to make some difference. But I am all for that. I think everybody at some degree should be learning how to live life. It's complex, you know. We don't get an instruction manual on how to make important life-altering decisions. You know,
I wonder if we could make a killing by creating one. You know,
maybe
Relationship 101 or something. Yeah.
Well, you're required to take 4 years of algebra or whatever the math requirements are, you know, and you start math classes as early as elementary school, but you don't get required relationship courses.
Yes, right.
And so a lot of us, I did the first several of my relationships, were painful and life-altering, because I just didn't have the tools to understand what a healthy relationship was, whether that relationship was with, with friends that were healthy, and had a sense of self-love, or women. The intimate relationships I had, I've had some doozies. I had professional relationships weren't healthy. I've had a lot of issues, and my experiences in learning things the hard way, makes a big difference in a lot of the commentaries that I write. A lot of them aren't.
Well, you never forget if you learn things the hard way.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. To me, that's the difference in knowing something and truly understanding it.
Yeah.
To a degree that you can make this knowledge effective. You can make it applicable to your life. And I would hope that when I leave, I've left my stamp on the torch. When the new editor-in-chief comes aboard next year, whether their style is like idealistic like mine, or if they're more like into the hard-hitting, controversial news and exposés and stuff. I would hope that my influence, in emphasizing cultural awareness and living healthy, making healthy decisions, whether it's substance abuse or abuse issues or whatever. I would hope that I've left my stamp and influenced the torch for the better.
Yeah.
Down the road.
So getting back to the diversity piece.
Okay.
Right. So the challenge with doing media advocacy and doing it right and remaining objective is basically advocating for pro-social policies, right? So today in Diversity Council, without revealing specifics, because because it's at a college leadership level, where we talk about stuff that can't necessarily be talked about. There's some controversy.
Yeah.
But let's talk about what happens, in a college campus, in a workplace, right? So you have cultural conflicts. You have people that use ethnic slurs. You have people who complain against their peers. Whether it's student to student, staff to student, faculty to student in the classroom, staff to staff, manager to, we have all different combinations.
Yeah.
Right? So our posture tends to be oriented, and Lane isn't unique in this in terms of being a workplace, of sanctioning the perpetrators, to use the law enforcement language.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that you don't say the fighting words, the N-bomb or whatever. But we don't do very much in terms of supporting the targets, right? We tend to be deficient in that, leaving them to seek their own healing. And so when you have talking about student awareness of because we've got student government folks sitting on that council saying, okay, well, I have students coming to me all the time with these issues. How do we put this on Front Street so that people understand what is available to them, what support is to them? And so, you have a role to play with that at some point. So how do you see your diversity role as the paper?
Well, we definitely have room for improvement. I'm the first to admit it. I'm actually, there's a lot of things behind the scenes that I'm working on improving.
I mean, sometimes objectivity reinforces institutional racism. So when that happens, you should kind of err on the side of, broadening your perspective.
Yes, and we have avenues for that. If we have causes like the Peace Symposium, we were objective in it. All the personal perspectives that were presented in this article, were the objectives of people that were involved. LCC instructors, Stan Taylor, Tom Hayden, the people that were involved, and we can interject perspectives and personal beliefs in that, but we just have to cite a source other than ourselves. So we have to say, according to Mark Harris, and then we can put a personal opinion. And just the fact that we're covering it, kind of helps promote that movement in the first place. So as far as I'm concerned, whatever our readers want to read about, we have an obligation to put that out there. And like I said, we have a lot of room for improvement too. We're working on that part. And I want to hear, I want to hear from our readers. I want to hear from the students, the people of all the various organizations. I'm always open to suggestions for improvement.
Final thoughts?
Just that we have a lot of people at the Torch working really hard to inform you, to serve their community. And this spring we're going to go for a budget increase, and we're going to try and take that and hire more writers so that we don't drop the ball. We've been dropping the ball here and there with some stories, and as much talent as we have, sometimes we have stories that fall through, and I feel bad about that, but we are learning to perfect our craft. We're not professionals yet. We have 15-year-olds, 19-year-olds, people my age and older, learning to perfect their craft. So if you can give us more input in the form of letters to the editor, make sure you email or call the section editor for whatever story you're wanting to get in there.
Right.
Let us know. We want to hear from you.
Thank you. We'll have to leave it there.
Okay.
If you like what you've seen, tell a friend. Email us at liveclass@lanecc.edu. Put DiversiTV in the subject line. Request feedback. Give us feedback. Send us ideas for what you'd like to see on the show. And tell a friend. Go well, stay well.